So then there's another story that is more, I wouldn't say spooky. I guess it's more heartwarming. Apparently, there was another story of a person by the name of Nellie Organ who lived on Spike Island. And she was born in Waterford in 1903, but she moved to the island again as her father was a soldier there. So we're seeing a lot of families moving during the, Nellie apparently also died of something called not tuberculosis, but Torellio-Carey syndrome, a disease that affected her jaw. Despite her severity of illness, she became quite religious over the years. She described visions and conversations with God. So a little bit Joan of Arc like in this moment.
Right, because otherwise it would have been considered witchcraft, and we all know how Irish feel about that.
Yeah, and then at age 5, she gained special permission to take her first communion shortly before her death. So she didn't even make it past, age 6. She died in 1908. She was buried in her communion dress at St. Joseph's Cemetery in Cork. She was then moved to Good Shepherd Cemetery, where she spent her last days at the request of nuns who were caring for her. On exhuming her body 1 year after her burial, the priest and 2 men present reported that she was found to be completely intact, unchanged in appearance, as if she'd been buried the day before. Even her jaw was unscathed, just the illness that she had. The story of little Nellie is now back before the council in Rome, who are considering her for a sainthood. To her life and some of her belongings are seen still to this day at Spike Island. So I guess they've kept some of these things. So what a kind of strange and yet interesting story of a young girl who's, lived on the island, and obviously some of her artifacts are still there. And yet, now they're talking in Rome about making her a saint because of her profound ability to, speak to God, like Joan of Arc, right? So kind of an interesting story that's not, I wouldn't say haunted per se, but still.
It's out there. Yeah.
It's pretty out there. Indeed, it is deep.
We'll be sainted when we're gone, Seeker.
I don't think I'm going to be getting any sainthoods.
God.
No, probably not. And you know what? I'm okay with it, since honestly, I'm not a religious person. So it'd be pretty hard to saint me when I don't I don't follow any of those things. So let's see. So those are some interesting stories. I kind of find the one about the creature-ish, like tall, slimy human somewhat interesting. I mean, I wonder what that's all about. Was it a mermaid? Was it I mean, it's
you never know.
No, I mean,
you're going down the rabbit hole after all.
All right, look at that. Woohoo! Successfully,
here we are.
Backdrop.
Oh, I like it. That's what I was on about the star shape. That was made on the backs of prisoners.
There we go. So you can see that it's not particularly a large island, but I mean, the Pacific itself is pretty good size. But let me just move over here. But you can see that it really isn't a big spot. I mean, this probably comes around and out, but the fort is sort of right on the edge on one side. So it is an interesting location. That's for sure. And the picture that I had behind me before, this one here, that is inside one of the.
That's one of the cells.
Yeah, that's one of the cells. They do have quite big windows.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Look at the window.
The windows are there's 2 in a room, and they're at levels where you could actually look outside instead of being way back over top. But then again, here we are, and obviously we can see that some of this has been completely redone. Right. This must be, I'm going to guess, from when they had the newer part of the prison in the 1980s.
Yeah. Right? Well, at the you're actually blocking it in the picture, but the building that's right at the bottom.
See if I can move it away.
Yeah, you can see that it's very
This one?
old. It looks like the roof is actually, it's
Grass?
missing its roof, and there's vegetation growing
Yes.
up through it.
Okay.
That so that's got to be one of the old original buildings.
I would think that this outer wall, this whole part here, is of the original fort. And that's kind of the interesting thing. It's like I wonder where I don't believe there's any remnants left of the monastery at all, right? And or the church that was there in the Middle Ages, but maybe the foundations are still present. That's possible? I couldn't find anything to tell me that. That's why we need to go there to.
Well,
We totally need
a
a tour. I'm up for a tour.
Yeah.
You talk about foundations and stuff. Now that the prison is now a tourist destination, they're actually doing archaeology work on the site. And I was reading that they uncovered some old stone staircases that were not on the plans.
Oh, wow.
And they don't know, was it something to do with
Oh,
the prison? Does it date back to the actual monastery? Like you
that's
say,
wild.
with a possible foundation. But they've got these stone stairways that were hidden,
Oh,
that
wow.
everybody's going, we never knew they were there.
That's awesome.
I do suspect that it is probably of the old monastery, because I mean they used to have a lot of, for keeping food and wine and ale and all of their provisions, they would have had some kind of underground storage. And I suspect the fort probably would have at some point as well had some storage locations that maybe they didn't know about.
Well, I think the fort in its early years was partially a storage depot as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And it's very interesting. That's what I say. Like it's got such a varied history at this location that the spirits and things would definitely be quite interesting to experience, I guess is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd like to do a paranormal investigation there and see for myself. I like hearing all these accounts and experiences, but there's nothing better than going there yourself and finding out,
Exactly. Like you're able to experience it for yourself, because it's, people can give stories and they can say
Right.
a lot of things. And I'm good with those things too, but I also like to be able to pick it up for myself, right? I want to be able to pick it up, to understand it, to feel it. So, okay, here's that picture, Rachel, that you sent.
Yes.
So I'm just going to move out of the way. So this is one that Rachel had mentioned that the lady on the tour.
Can you see the 2 feet at the? I might have another picture that might show it a little clearer, but
in the background there seems to be where she has, drawn around the end of the corridor, where I guess she believes
I can make it out, the 2 feet.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult. We'll post the pictures on Facebook.
This one's the closer look. You can see the feet. Okay,
let's see
the close up.
The joys of being able to change my background.
Yeah, but it certainly helps.
So people can have a look and see what we're talking about. Oh, okay. So it's the
two. It looks like 2 feet.
Photo. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So let's see if I can wrangle that one. Let's see. Oh, I see it. Okay. Interesting. I'm gonna debunk it immediately. But I can see that it is just shadow bleed from the hallway, but I'm going to put it up anyway so people can have it. I can just.
This is from Louise Bunyan. It was from her Twitter feed where they did a Halloween after dark paranormal, I guess, tour.
Right. But okay, so I'm going to post this up. People can have a look at it themselves. I kind of am looking at it going, yeah, it just really looks like bleed through. Ian, you'll have a look at it too once I post it. Let's see if I can get it
I
here.
hate commenting on photos. I really do.
Go ahead. You know what though? I mean, we have to comment on photos because otherwise, how
But
are
I get people sending me photos, and it's like, oh, look, what do you think about this?
Well, I had somebody send some video the other night, and
I can see what you're looking at there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just shadow bleed.
I think it looks like 2 feet to me. Like it looks like 2 feet at the end of the corridor.
You gotta think
like two legs that are parted, like that, like someone standing there sideways.
Yeah, they could be, but you've got to think about the perspective as well, right? This is a really long way away from where she's shooting. So that person would be incredibly tall, large, or big. And, you know, we don't know how apparitions present themselves. But for me, it just looks like, because there's light here and then there's this shadow, it just looks like a shadow. Well, what do we call a shadow bleed? I don't think that there's any actual anything there other than that. I mean, that's my opinion.
I think it's fun to look at these pictures and just, you know, whatever, and it gives us something to talk about.
It's fun, right? But like Ian said, I mean, I had some video the other night someone sent me, and, you know, talking about orbs again. And when I was looking at it, I could see that it wasn't orbs, it was just dust, and there was a bug. Because
that's just like a long argument, isn't it? You know, people with orbs, they're like, I won't even talk about orbs.
Yeah,
it causes arguments. Was it a white orb or a pink orb or?
And here's the thing.
You remember our show about the colors of orbs and what they mean?
And I mean, it's still fascinating, but you know, somebody's given that attachment to it, right? Yeah. It's not something that we can say is yes or no or maybe or whatever. It's just, it is what it is. But what I find fascinating is through my many years of doing this and many years of researching is that orbs don't exist prior to photography. And I'm talking modern photography.
Digital photography.
Right? Digital photography. So prior to that, there's no pictures of orbs. There's nobody capturing orbs or, you know, anything like that. So it has a lot to do with the shutter speeds on digital cameras. And when you take it with your cell phone, it has a very laggy shutter. So even if you have like the best phone, you still get lag because they're not for shooting at night, and the shutter stays open to allow the light in. So that's why you get these trails. It's much like security cameras too. And so that's like this video. It was just dust, and then there was an insect, and you could tell it was a bug because it had a very specific movement. And we know, like when a moth flies, you know, you can tell that it's an insect. And then you can tell dust because when the heat or the ventilation system kicks in, suddenly you have all these downward moving orbs, right? Or upward moving orbs, depending on where your ventilation is. So it's unfortunate. I mean, there are some orbs that we don't know. We have never been able to debunk because, you know, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. So I haven't seen any orb stories about Spike Island, but I'm sure that there's people who have probably captured some on their video or some that, you know, they feel could be a spirit. But I do like the idea of visiting this place. It just seems to be.
I want to go. I would like to do that. Set up a tour and go somewhere, you know, go to a couple of places that we've talked about. That would be great.
Yeah, I mean, Ireland's got some really great locations, right? We've got great castles and great old buildings and sites that have a lot of history to them. And so this is another one that, I mean, you know, we only have
Scotland.
We only talk for an hour, so it's just such a short time to really get into any detail. And we like to bring up all kinds of locations because we haven't been to them all.
No.
And I think that that's important for people to know, is that you can still talk about a location even though you haven't been there. Because if it's interesting, then you look at the history and you look at the stories and you look at what's being told. And then when you have the opportunity to go there, you know, then you can verify or you can talk about what you experienced or didn't experience.